Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Team Kentucky Update. We're going to do today's update in two parts. First, an update on the flooding in Eastern Kentucky, and then we will move into some good economic development news, some good budgetary news, and a couple of other pieces. But first, as an overview on what is the most devastating and deadly flooding, certainly in my lifetime, severe weather storm worked its way through southeastern Kentucky, dumping 14 to 16 inches of rain, most intensely from July 27th to 28th. When we look back at what we think we will be able to define as the overall storm system, we're really looking July 25th through the 30th. July 28th, I declared a state of emergency. That was the 27th. On the 28th, on the 28th, I declared the state of emergency. On the 29th, President Biden issued a federal disaster declaration. To date, we have lost 38 Kentuckians in 5 counties. That is 8 in Breathitt, 2 in Clay, 18 in Knott, 3 in Letcher, and 7 in Perry. And we still have 2 missing individuals that we are very concerned about. Vanessa Baker, a 60-year-old female from the Lost Creek community in Breathitt County, and Nancy Cundiff, a 29-year-old female from that same Lost Creek community. If you have any information on these individuals, please contact the KSP Hazard Post. That is Post 13 at 606-435-6069. So looking at this overall, the good news is that with the weather system that just moved through, that while it hit and caused some flooding in certain areas, does not appear that it exacerbated major damage. And right now it doesn't appear like we had any loss of life from it. The good news is with that weather system having substantially moved through, we are likely out of the emergency phase of responding to this disaster. Certainly the rain last night could have been, and these were the National Weather Service's words, torrential, and that could have caused some real significant additional damage and potential loss of life. We had kept a lot of our search and rescue folks, including federal and from other regions, on standby in the region. With the weather as we're seeing it the next several days, we're now able to let those folks go home. So, that is a major step that we have been waiting to reach this moment basically since the start of this. So to give you a concept on where I think we are and where I think we are going, I see our response to this flooding in 3 phases. The first is the emergency phase. This is search and rescue. This is getting a shelter over somebody's head, getting them anywhere. It's trying to get power back up and back on. It's establishing distribution points for water. It's those types of pieces. And when we move out of the emergency phase, and not all pieces will move at the same time, we really move into a stabilization phase. This is getting people out of congregate settings, congregate shelters, getting them into our state parks, or more, getting them into travel trailers or other places they can rent or stable with families. This is getting their government documents back to them and every other service they need. This is getting all of our infrastructure, which is a little bit more, or trying to back online. This is debris removal in this stage 2. It's when we are not worried about getting somebody out on an airlift, but ultimately how we get them more stable for the next, say, 6 months. And then there is a rebuilding phase, and some of that will start in the near term, and some of it will take a bit longer. So let's go over specifically the emergency phase, because a lot of good work has been done. I want to talk a little bit about where we started and where we are now. So the first and most important part of an emergency phase is search and rescue. Really proud that between the Kentucky National Guard, Tennessee National Guard, West Virginia National Guard, Kentucky State Police, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and so many other first responders, Over 1,334 rescues completed between July 28th and August 2nd. Many more by neighbors, thousands of people that we otherwise would have lost. We were able to get out and get to safety. Losing 38 Kentuckians, children of God, is tough. It's real tough. And we mourn with those families. But when you see the pictures, when you see the video, or you stand in the communities that this water went through, it is a miracle that we did not lose more people. I give that both to God and also to the people that that are out there that answered His call into service and ultimately helped so many of our fellow citizens. Second piece of emergency response, or another one, is shelter. How do we get somebody to a dry place where we can give them a meal? So right now, 20 local organizations, including state parks, churches, schools, and community centers, open their doors to more than 483 survivors that are still in shelters. At one point, we had a little over 500. That number starting to decrease does suggest that people are finding more stable housing. Kentucky State Resort Parks are housing 321 of these survivors with assistance from the Red Cross. That's 177 in Jenny Wiley, 4 in Paintsville, 6 in Pine Mountain, and 136 in Buckhorn. Then there are 162 individuals that are staying in congregate shelters. Certainly, as we move into the stabilization phase, we want to get them out of those group shelters, those gyms, and make sure we can get them to a more stable place. So this is probably more in the stabilization area, but travel trailers. This is an area where even during the emergency response, we were able to move a little bit into what I would consider the second phase. We now have 82 travel trailers in Eastern Kentucky. We have 25 in Jenny Wiley, 14 already occupied. Think about how fast that is compared to the amount of time it took to get this program up and running in the West. In Carr Creek, that's in Knott County, 18 trailers, 12 occupied. In Mine Made Campground in Knott County, 30 travel trailers, 9 are occupied. And in Crockettsville Campground, that's in Owsley County, 9 are on the scene, none occupied yet. We're working through that. 633 people have registered for travel trailers through the Eastern Kentucky Sheltering Program. You can go to our flood resource page online. That's governor.ky.gov/flood resources. And you can apply for this type of housing there. We are working on getting significant additional travel trailers. There's really 2 leads we're following on how we bring in those additional ones. We ought to have more information on that soon. We're certainly going to have all 100 that are available occupied in the near future. That is a good thing. And it also creates a good challenge in how we get more. And to give you a concept, August 3rd, we launched the online registration for these. August 8th, we added the phone number for it, 502-234-1225. Another aspect of the emergency phase is water and food distribution. National Guard distributed more than 39,094 bottles of water, 43,882 meals. And then think about every school and every other place that served as a distribution hub. You know, I'm not sure that there's any better stretch of road that shows you both the damage and the response than I think it's Kentucky 15 between the Hazard Airport and Jackson. And what you will see, and that's that Lost Creek community where we're still missing people, where the president came and visited, is massive devastation. But on the other side of the road, about every 2 miles, there is another group that is set up to help people that has water and food, showers, and bathrooms. So much generosity. Our goal was to take so much water to these counties that they said, please stop bringing us water. And we have hit that in virtually every county. That's a testament to what we'll talk about in water in a minute. But the other side of it on water was keeping our clinics, our medical facilities open, and certainly took a lot of non-drinking water to those facilities, be it primary care, Mountain Comp, and many others, to make sure they could continue to provide medical services. We look at power and power outages on July 28th, we had 25,111 outages. Yesterday, that was under 230. Now, today, it's about 749 because of the storms that came through last night. That's normal. We don't think any of it is long-term damage. And we think probably by the end of the day, we'll be back down to the 230 mark. What that does not include are structures that are no longer there or no longer habitable that we can no longer connect power to. Certainly, there are probably more than 230 of those structures, and want to make sure that those out there that have lost their home, that are seeing this, know that we know you don't have power, and we know that you need long-term help. We'll talk about getting you stabilized, and then we'll talk about rebuilding. On the water side, on July 28th, we had more than 40,000 outages. Today, that's down to 6,325, and those are located mainly in just a couple of areas. I mean, we were in Fleming Neon yesterday, and the damage is so significant. We're also in McRoberts, which is pretty close to Fleming Neon. Fleming Neon, perhaps the hardest hit downtown that we've seen. You can see how the water came through in their downtown with the giant X's saying that you can't even go into the buildings because of the damages to the structures. I want to thank their mayor. I got to talk to her and their sanitation workers who, man, are out there working so hard. And then to everybody who's in from all different places. St. Matthews Police had a couple folks that were there helping out, along with so many others. They're doing God's work. Still have a lot of boiled water advisories, but that's down from about 46,000 on July 28th to 35,000 here on, at least as of yesterday, on August 10th. We've gone from 18 wastewater management systems not functioning at full capacity to 5 that are not operational. So a ton of really good work on where we've come in just 2 weeks. So I think it's important that we first acknowledge that this has been an unprecedented flooding disaster. But at the same time, it has been an unprecedented response. I've never seen flooding do so much damage, so much harm, leave so much destruction. But I have never seen a response in 2 weeks, looking at the amount of damage that has made this much progress. And credit to that goes to everybody, every single person, especially those in these communities. All right, so when we look at moving from emergency to stabilization, certainly a lot to do here. First is intermediate housing, and we gave you that update on the travel trailers. That's one piece that we're going to continue to build on. But what we saw in Western Kentucky is there are some rental options in different areas that are out there that people will move to. Some folks will find family members that are able to go to. Some folks will ultimately decide there's another piece of property that is okay, that it's out there that they can move to. The travel trailers, though, are a critical part of that. It's ultimately not just getting people out of gyms that we're using as shelters, but ultimately even out of the state parks where we're going to help people as long as we need, and into something where they have more space and more privacy. Second big piece of the stabilization process is FEMA and the FEMA process that's supposed to be there to help people. So let's go over where we are there. 12 counties have been approved for individual assistance and disaster unemployment assistance through FEMA. 13 counties have been approved for public assistance by FEMA. So individual assistance helps individuals that are harmed. Public assistance is a lot of the public infrastructure, city, county, and state. Residents in 4 counties are eligible for direct temporary housing assistance. So right now, survivors in any of the counties approved for individual assistance can also get $500 in critical needs assistance. To date, more than 6,000 applicants have received this assistance. I'm going to talk about where I'm concerned about FEMA in a minute, but this one seems to be going well. These $500 payments to help people just to get groceries and other things, FEMA seems to be getting those dollars out. There's also a clean and sanitize program that provides $300. That seems to be getting out, but $300 isn't nearly enough when, 14 days after you got mold 3.5 feet up in where you were living. You can apply for those two programs at disasterassistance.gov. You can do the mobile app. You can call 1-800-621-3362, or you can go to one of the FEMA centers or talk to one of their mobile groups. There are 5 mobile registration centers that are now open. Those are going out to communities, and we have talked to people where FEMA has gone to their house itself. And we have 6 disaster recovery locations that are now open. Can we put those up? Those are in Breathitt, Letcher, Perry, Knott, Clay, and now we're opening one in Pike today at the Dorton Community Center, 112 Dorton Hill Road. FEMA reports that they've approved $19.4 million for 2,701 households. On August 5th, a DRC opens in Clay County. Next one opened in Knott on the 6th, on the 8th in Breathitt, on the 9th, Breathitt and Letcher. So that's the update on where you can go. Let me say to people applying for disaster assistance, number 1, do not give up. Number 2, if you're denied, go and look these people in the eye. I've been told that they can reopen your claim without you having to appeal. So I want you to appeal if you're denied, and they can tell you everything you need. Sadly, the process is not like one that most of us are used to, where if you don't have something you need in your application, it tells you it's incomplete. They just deny you, and that's not right. But that's the system as it is right now. The other thing is we have been promised that everybody denied is going to get a call from the national group and talk them through that. With that said, I've said this to the president. I've said this to the vice president. I've said this multiple times to the administrator, that's the head of FEMA. I've said it to our regional administrator, and I've said it to those that are in our emergency operations center. In fact, I've said it on our county judge calls every day for the past 3 days. Too many people are being denied. Not enough people are being approved. And this is the time that FEMA's got to get it right to change what has been a history of denying too many people and not providing enough dollars, and to get it right here. I'm hearing from the very top levels that they fully agree. And from the people on the ground, I was talking to them yesterday, they want to provide help. Something in the middle is problematic. And I'm going to continue to advocate and push as hard as I can to get the changes that we need so people can get their dollars. Talk to somebody whose 82-year-old grandmother was told at a site visit that everything was okay. All the documents were there, only to get denied later that night through an email. That's not right. We're going to keep running this down. And you can bet both myself and Kentucky Emergency Management are talking every single day about this. I'm grateful for the support we're getting from the federal government, but I will advocate relentlessly to make sure our people can get this help. I am not on any red or blue or R or D team. I am on Team Kentucky, and I am going to be there for the people of Eastern Kentucky. And I am not satisfied with the way that FEMA claims are coming back right now. We're going to continue to push to be treated better by that organization. And again, they got a lot of people on the ground. We're really grateful for it, probably more than in response to just about any other disaster. We got individual assistance faster than I think any time in history. I'm really grateful for that. We had search and rescue teams in. Really grateful for that. These cleaning and other payments aren't always available at other times. I'm grateful for that. Public assistance faster than we normally see. Cut through a ton of red tape. I'm grateful for that. But in the end, our people are going to need this help, and we need to see better outcomes. Okay, when we also look at the stabilization phase, infrastructure is a part of that. In emergencies, it's about getting the roads open so people can cross them. In stabilization, it's about making sure we start the repairs that are needed, especially for well-traveled thoroughfares. So we are now 100% of assessments on public bridges. That's 1,098 bridges that were inventoried. 27 state and county bridges are currently impassable. That's 27 out of 1,098. But 84 have been identified for replacement or repair. And of those 84, 32 of those have been identified for replacement. Debris removal. That began Saturday, August the 6th through the close of yesterday. 227 truckloads of debris have been removed from 6 counties. You're going to see this pace pick up a ton. Once we get all the private contracts set and the folks are in there, you will see this debris removal really pick up. Debris removal from creeks is a challenge we're working through right now. I believe we're going to get to a good outcome, but it's going to be absolutely necessary because of how much debris there is there. If you've been there, you see it. Little bits of people's houses every 10 yards and the trees on the side, people's cars in it, shoved into the riverbank. And if we do not get those riverbanks clean and cleared, it's going to cause more flooding. Certainly in the future, if not in the near future. Schools, stabilization, we got to get our schools open in some form. We got to get our kids in them. Our superintendents have done incredible work here. They're being thoughtful. They're coming up with the right options. Some of them are missing 1, 2, maybe even 4 schools. They're not going to be able to put people in, but they are working real hard. And I believe within a matter of weeks, from when school is ultimately going to begin before this, they'll have those kids in there with some semblance of normalcy. I hope in the special session that we're working on that we will have significant dollars for schools. We will need more than we needed in the West, because in the West, we didn't really have structural damage to schools. So here we'll have not only the services that are needed for kids who've been through trauma, but we will also have even the full rebuild of a number of schools, and it shouldn't have to wait until another budget. And listen, I think the entire General Assembly is on board with that. Another thing that we have to do to stabilize people is to provide them the government services they need in the short term. Disaster unemployment assistance is one of those. So we've opened 6 mobile DUA offices. We've processed 1,000 claims. Everybody in the individual assistance counties can apply. They can apply in person by kcc.ky.gov or by phone at 502-875-0442. When we look at disaster unemployment assistance, the disaster recovery centers that are already open, that they are moving to work out of, Breathitt, 2 in Clay, 1 in Floyd, 1 in Knott, 1 in Letcher, 1 in Perry, 1 in Pike. And then we're working to open 1 in Leslie County, McGoffin, Martin, Owsley, and Whitley. So here are the open centers. And we'll put this out again on social media. And then can you flip to these are centers to be open and where they will be. All right, another piece that we have to be there in the stabilization phase is a large part of people's health care. Tetanus vaccines have been administered in affected counties. I think we've done 4,374 tetanus shots at least, and 1,874 doses of hepatitis A vaccines have been given. Those are administered at any site. Those aren't just state folks. SNAP, if you are on food assistance, you have to have documentation of that. And when you lose it, we got to replace it as fast as we can. 2,516 replacements done thus far, more than 1,200 meals delivered to seniors. We've also been providing naloxone to the various shelters. So we're still in the midst of an opioid crisis, and we want to make sure that we don't lose people when maybe the added stress pushes an addiction even further. We've had 67 replacement vital statistics document issued. Those are birth and death certificates. There's no charge for those. We're assisting older individuals with disabilities. That can be from replacing dentures to grandparent stipends for grandchildren to cooling assistance. We've activated the Kentucky Community Crisis Response Team. That's mental health services. Provided psychological first aid services, telehealth and crisis support for first responders and volunteers. Remember, it's traumatic, not just to go through one of these events. It's traumatic to be there to see the suffering. And even though we should all feel good that we're helping, it's okay to be overwhelmed by the emotion. And if you're one of the fish and wildlife officers that have sadly found most of the people that we've lost, please get a little help. It's okay to not be okay. It's actually really natural in these circumstances. Transportation Cabinet has removed at least 153 mudslides, assisted overwhelmed county road departments by reopening or making passable at least 96 county roads. All the state roads are open. We offered pop-up driver's licensing at 6 locations. 653 new driver's license have been put out there. At least 180 KYTC personnel from 9 highway districts have come in to help. So that third phase, I'm not going to talk about a lot today because we are really just moving in to stabilization, but that's the rebuilding. This is long-term housing. This is the challenge of private bridges that have been wiped out, that were the only way to get to certain private property. In some instances, they may cost the same, if not more, than the structure that may have been knocked out. And then resiliency, how and where to rebuild, how to hopefully give people more help prevent this from happening to them again. All of those conversations are going on. Certainly, we're going to have to be really creative. Now, in a disaster like this, when almost no one has insurance or had flood insurance, the rebuild on this is going to be maybe more complicated than we've seen anywhere in the country. It's certainly going to be a real challenge. But I can say I'm hearing innovative and new ideas coming up from these localities about how to be there and help their people and ensure that this doesn't happen, at least like this again. Another part in that rebuilding phase, though, is to have the resources. A lot of groups are coming in right now and thankfully providing immediate assistance. That is really important. We set up the Team Eastern Kentucky Flood Relief Fund for longer-term assistance. It's what's allowed us to help farmers 6 months after the tornadoes. It's what's allowed us to team with Habitat for Humanity and rebuilding houses, and now at other recovery efforts with local groups. The Team Eastern Kentucky Flood Relief Fund, now 31,667 donations, including one from me. It's more than $5 million, $5,246,022. Total of 35 funeral payments have gone out of the 38 lost Kentuckians. That's so that we can grieve together and so they don't have to go through any reimbursement or any of the rest and any other program. I want to briefly mention a couple of groups that have contributed to this fund. They are certainly Team Kentucky All-Stars, HCA Healthcare, New York Life, both made $100,000 contributions. Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, $50,000 contribution. Brown Forman, a $30,000 contribution. Chevron, a $25,000 contribution. Honorable Order of Kentucky Colonels, who always step up, $25,000, and Duke Energy, $12,500. Those are just a couple of groups that have stepped up that we wanted to make sure that we acknowledged. And anybody else who wants to help, Team EKY floodrelieffund.ky.gov, fully transparent. Every dollar is going to go to help people. All right, there is never a good transition from an update on a natural disaster to other news going on in the state. But we do have other news that we want to make sure that we provide. The first part is really helpful. It's 3 new job announcements and a grand opening of one we announced previously. So we are keeping the economic momentum going with news this week, and we want to make sure that these new announcements are also going to reach areas that were hard hit, because if we truly want to keep an area moving and humming, we want to make sure people don't move out. It's about providing good jobs that people can see a future in. So first up is Bluegrass Supply Chain Services, LLC. They call themselves BSC, which provides logistics services to the automotive and food beverage sectors. BSC is a Bowling Green-based business that's about to celebrate 20 years of business in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And what better way to celebrate a 20-year anniversary than a major new investment in Warren County. Company leaders are co-developing and leasing a facility in partnership with an entity operated by the same ownership. It's going to be $25 million in investment. It's going to create 110 good paying full-time jobs that expand their logistics capabilities to serve customers throughout the state and the country and beyond. In fact, roughly 40% of BSC's customer base is right here in Kentucky. So when we're talking about supply chain and service issues that have been caused these last couple of years, what we know is the closer that you have your services and your supply chain, the more reliable it is. BSC gets that, and in fact, have been assisting so many different Kentucky companies. The additional office and warehousing space associated with this investment is BSC's second Bowling Green location and expands their services, which include reverse logistics, e-commerce fulfillment, and transportation management across a 6-state region. BSC's leaders also maintain Bluegrass Dedicated in Bowling Green, which operates a fleet of 100 trucks providing transportation services throughout the United States. I'm thrilled to see this announcement. Continues a role that Kentucky's on, continues a role that Bowling Green is on, and pretty incredible that a company that's been here 20 years marks their 20th anniversary with an expansion. Next, we have Skillcraft LLC, a company that's been in Kentucky for 57 years. It was founded in northern Kentucky, the community of Burlington, in 1965, and they produce high-quality precision sheet metal components. In 2016, they expanded to include fabrication components for the aviation industry, primarily in jet engines. Yesterday, we announced that they're investing $8.4 million to create 14 additional new well-paying jobs for Kentuckians with an expansion in Hebron. The 22,000 square foot expansion will increase their square footage and further the support for the aerospace industry. By the way, that is our top export here in Kentucky, aerospace. The project will accommodate increased production capacity and new equipment, and it'll push Skillcraft's employment in northern Kentucky alone to 126, including the Burlington operation. They serve several industries. In addition to aerospace, they include medical products, security and banking equipment, telecom and electronics, government and defense, as well as original equipment manufacturer, or OEM markets. They were acquired last year by O'Neill Industries, and that built its portfolio of 9 leading brands to about $2.8 billion. So I want to thank the leaders of Skillcraft as well as their new owner, O'Neill Industries, for believing in us. We will not let you down. Next up is Stober Drives Incorporated, whose expansion we announced just this morning. This is a $5 million investment creating 35 full-time jobs at their existing operation in Maysville. Stober is a manufacturer of gearboxes and servo motors and has operated in Mason County for more than 30 years. Do you hear a theme? Those who come to Kentucky grow in Kentucky. All 3 today, existing industries, adding jobs and making major investments in us. This project will double the size of its current site to 14 acres. They're going to acquire new equipment, and they're going to increase their manufacturing operation. It'll allow company leaders to convert a portion of the current office space into a training facility as well. With this expansion, they're going to have 160 employees, nearly all Kentucky residents. Stober's leadership noted the incredible workforce and support at the local and state level as key factors in their decision to expand in Mason County. They've also highlighted the importance of local higher education institutions, such as the Maysville Community and Technical College, Morehead State, somewhere Rocky just perked up, and Northern Kentucky University. This support network includes all the ingredients needed to build long-term economic growth in the Commonwealth. I'm excited to see this company grow in Maysville for decades to come, and I want to thank its leadership. Finally, we have the grand opening of a flagship laboratory in Louisville for Elite Diagnostics. We announced this project back in February, and the Lieutenant Governor was there this morning to help cut the ribbon, which is creating 100 full-time jobs for Kentuckians. The company's first operation in the Commonwealth is furthering their ability to service veterinary labs throughout the United States. The National Hub is a 33,000 square foot technology advanced laboratory and will rely on Kentucky's ideal geographic location to provide next-day lab results across the country. Proximity to UPS Worldport played a huge role in bringing them here. New jobs are being created in Jefferson County through this project. It'll include licensed veterinary technicians, laboratory techs, and medical transcriptionists. Ellie provides high-quality lab services across a significant number of areas with user-friendly reporting that allows pet owners to easily access and understand the well-being of their pets. I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Coleman for joining local leaders this morning to cut the ribbon on this new facility. And I want to thank everybody at LA Diagnostics, proof that we're not just going to be the workers, but the thinkers and the innovators of the future. And it's happening right here in Kentucky. So today we also have more good news on our fiscal health, the fiscal health of this Commonwealth. As governor, one of my main jobs is to make sure that we are operating this Commonwealth within our means, and we are doing much more than that. We are seeing unprecedented growth in our general fund. We are seeing the largest budget surpluses in our history, along with the lowest unemployment rate ever in Kentucky and the fewest people on unemployment since the year 2000. So more good news to share regarding our general fund. Yesterday, State Budget Director John Hicks, who's now also the Executive Cabinet Secretary, announced that general fund receipts for July, the first month of this new fiscal year, 2023, totaled more than $1 billion, a 9.7% increase compared to July of 2021. This is the fifth consecutive month and 10 out of the last 11 months in which collections have exceeded $1 billion. This was pretty rare until this last year. And you might see it once or twice. You might see it when people's income taxes came in. But I don't think I've ever seen 5 consecutive months. I don't think we'd ever seen 2 consecutive months with over $1 billion in receipts. The increase in revenue proves that the Kentucky economy remains strong, with payrolls increasing and consumers continuing to make purchases. See, we can see corporate income tax, in other words, showing that they are making profits, and it appears record. We see people's income taxes showing that they are making more. We see all sectors of the economy, the sales tax, come in on this. The news follows last month's report that we had the highest annual growth rate in 31 years. And for the second year in a row, our general fund budget surplus had exceeded $1 billion. Revenues came in $945 million higher than budgeted, the second highest revenue surplus ever, surpassed only by the previous year. The budget bill includes a surplus spending plan. This is from last year, but nearly all of it going to the rainy day account, now $2.7 billion. Again, this is good news. It's good news, and showing growth in Kentucky's economy is continuing, even with inflation. That I get, it's hard to see this growth, but to say it's hard to get through the week because of inflation. Both are happening at the same time. That hasn't traditionally happened this way in America or in our economy, but it's certainly happening in Kentucky, and if not, in part in the country as well. But I do want to briefly go over gas prices, because one of the toughest parts of inflation has been gas prices, and they got way, way up there to levels that I certainly had never seen. Really, we're making a hit on everybody's finances. But the good news continues. We are now down to an average gas price in Kentucky of $3.59. It's dropped 77 cents in the last month. It's been dropping every day for more than 50 days, and we have stayed 40 cents below the national average at the toughest of times, and certainly as it has gotten better. We are in the lowest category for retail prices in the country. The most important thing is that they are going down, and they are continuing to go down. This time last year, we were at about $2.90, so still, 60, 70 cents more than then, but we were comparing $2.90 to almost $5, more than 2 months ago. Now, certainly moving in the right direction. But again, steps we have taken to fight inflation, knowing that it's hard out there. Even as we're seeing a bright future, we got to get through the present. Included freezing the property rate on vehicle property taxes for 2 years. That's $340 million of savings. I tried to get the legislature to decrease the sales tax temporarily. That would have been $873 million. You would have saved on everything you buy. They wouldn't do that. Been pushing the federal government 3 or 4 different ways that they could lower gas prices. We continue to push. I froze what would have been a statutory rise in the gas tax. That meant our state law would have made you pay more, and nobody wanted that to happen. So we took the steps to stop that. Saves people $35.4 million. And we activated the price gouging laws in regards to gas. Remember, there are other tips to save. We still have the Team Kentucky Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund, Homeowners Assistance Fund, the Affordable Connectivity Program, the Child Care Assistance Program. Community action agencies have a number of programs, the Kentucky Prescription Assistance Program, and Medicare prescription drug costs, all ways that are out there to save you dollars at a time when it's so necessary. Update on COVID. The map is still pretty rough. A ton of red counties, though we have some green counties for the first time in a couple of weeks. What this means is that COVID is high. As we look at the stair stepper chart, we'll really be waiting to see, given that we went down and up a little bit, if maybe we are plateauing. Certainly, we all hope for a decrease, but worldwide, certainly deaths have gone down a little bit in the last week plus. And this is what people think is going to happen now, right? We're going to have, I don't want to call them surges because you can't compare it to Omicron or Delta or even Alpha, but increases in cases followed by what we hope are just as quick decreases in cases. Positivity rate up a little bit too. We had hoped that this would be going down and down since this is more of a leading indicator, but now this is just a PCR test, and you don't go in and get a PCR test unless you think you have it. Maybe you've even already tested positive on an at-home. Hospitalizations continuing to go up, though nothing like the steep rises in the past. This shows that COVID is less severe, causes less severe illness than it used to, but that's still a lot of people in the hospital, folks. So make sure you get vaccinated. We are seeing the vaccination rate up 2, 3, 4 times. Make sure you get boosted as well. If you're over 50, get that second booster. ICU's gone up some as well, less so than the hospitalization rate, but still of concern. Then ventilators still pretty far down, maybe up a little bit, but this is because this new version, this new variant hits your respiratory system in a different place. So be aware of COVID. If you're sick, don't go to work or don't go to school. Test if you're sick. If you're in a red county, consider wearing a mask, especially if you are vulnerable. Everybody now has all the information on how COVID spreads, what you can do to stop it. Please try to make the best decisions for you, knowing that at this point, we all know how this thing works and how we can protect ourselves. All right, with that, we will open it up to questions to journalists in person. We'll start with Carolina.
Governor, you spoke with the Medical Cannabis Advisory Committee today. What's the progress on that issue? Is legalization through executive action still on the table?
I met with the Medical Cannabis Advisory Commission today, and they gave me a report on all the hearings that they have had throughout the state, both numerically, but also in the stories they heard, shows that Kentuckians are overwhelmingly in support of medical cannabis, or call it medical marijuana, overwhelmingly. And people who are finding it helpful when the only other choice may be opioids that don't work as well and also have severe long-term implications, including addiction. Stories have gone from examples. These aren't stories. These are people who've gotten up and shared their pain. Mothers whose children have seizures, to veterans dealing with PTSD, to people dealing with a range of conditions that cause significant pain, from migraines to Crohn's to so many others. And many have found that medical cannabis legally purchased in another state has been really helpful for them. Problem is they can purchase it fully legally in another state. When they cross our state line, they become concerned that they go from patients to criminals, and that's not right. So they set out a summary, and I'll be getting more information of what they've gone through. But I do believe there is room for executive action. Do I think it can reach to full legalization? Probably not. But do I think that we are going to be able to provide some relief, especially for those that are suffering? Yes, I do. Tom Latek.
Thank you, Governor. I've got two for you real quick. With gas prices going down 8 consecutive weeks, why renew the state of emergency? And secondly, Speaker Pro Tem Meade yesterday said that they thought they would be ready for special session anytime after the end of next week. Are you on that same timetable, or what are you hearing?
So as far as a special session to help with the flooding in Eastern Kentucky, we're talking directly to leadership about dates, and we're exchanging dates when we think people may or may not be ready. We have to talk to the Senate and to the House. And when we have an announcement on the dates, we'll get it to you. We want to do it as early as we can, but we also want full agreement on language, on number of pieces of legislation, and all that's going well. There is real progress. There are discussions. There is no dissension. There are different ideas about how to reach the same goal, but all of it is on track. While gas is going down, and I'm grateful for that, it's still too high for our families. We are still concerned that whether in Eastern Kentucky or other places, people might gouge and engage in gouging, and ultimately we need it to continue to fall to be in a place where our families can afford it. Josh James, WKY.
Hi, Governor. I tuned in a little late, so apologies if you've already touched on this, but Senators Paul and McConnell are calling on both you and the president to allow flood-affected communities to free up COVID-related funds for emergency relief related to the disaster. How do you feel about that proposal, and are you open to that?
So the use of COVID funds is entirely under the control of the federal government. So that's Senators Paul and McConnell, and then the federal administration. They're the ones who set the allowable uses. We can only spend federal dollars in the way the federal government tells us that we can, and then the federal government comes and audits us. So we would need clear guidance on that. I hope that both Senator McConnell and Senator Paul are also looking at the ways that in conjunction with the legislature, we're spending some of those funds. For instance, we used $250 million of ARPA funds last year, and we have $250 million this year going to water and wastewater systems. Those are really important systems to help stop flooding or to deal with it while it's here. So my hope is that any plan to free up funds doesn't take away from the long-term solutions just to deal with short-term challenges that the federal government could provide other funds for. In other words, we've got to respond, and we've got to be there for our people. We've got to be there for them today, tomorrow, and next year. And all of our use of those funds has been decided jointly between the administration and the General Assembly, and passed through that budgetary process. And that includes a supermajority of Republicans in both the House and the Senate. But again, how we can spend these funds is wholly up to the federal government. I'd love flexibility in all federal funds that come down, and any additional flexibility would be something that we would definitely want to look at. Bria Jones, WFPL.
Thank you, Governor. I've been seeing a lot of folks who are in Eastern Kentucky saying that the floods really exacerbated existing infrastructural issues in those areas. And I know that we're a bit away from the rebuilding phase still, but when we get there, do you think that part of that will be not only getting things back to where they were before the flooding took place, but getting them to a place that brings those more rural areas up to closer standards to where we might be in like more metropolitan areas as far as infrastructure goes?
I absolutely think as we build back we have to build in a way that is more resilient. And people need to understand that that's just not something you can say we're going to do and it happens. It's a real challenge, especially when there is a limited amount of flat land. We have a lot of people that aren't from Kentucky or haven't been to some of these areas that say, well, you can't just rebuild where it floods. Well, in some of these communities, where else are you going to rebuild? There's not another spot. And so we're working with local leadership to try to be creative, to try to look at everything that's out there, to look at if a school has been totaled, where do we rebuild the school? What can we do around it? I believe that local leaders are thinking outside the box when it comes to this. We certainly don't want to put, say, a family with kids back in a dangerous situation, but also understand this might be the only piece of property they own. Could be in their family for 100+ years. So there are not going to be any easy solutions on the rebuild side. And I want to be clear, this is going to be one of the most complicated things we've ever done. And not everybody's going to be happy with it in any direction that's chosen. But what I'm seeing is courage and innovation in the thought process just 2 weeks after this about wanting to try to find a way that folks can live in the county that they love and not be faced with something like this again. Melissa Patrick, Kentucky Health News.
Hi, Governor. So your focus for a month or so now has been on personal choice when it comes to how Kentuckians make decisions about the pandemic. The Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky put out a poll yesterday. Says that more than half of Kentuckians think the pandemic is over when it comes to their own personal choices in life. So we know that's not true, that the pandemic is not over, but what else can be done to persuade Kentuckians that the pandemic is not over, or is what we're doing right now enough?
Oftentimes polling is not what you know, but how you feel. And I think a lot of Kentuckians out there are tired after 2.5 years of a pandemic, and that is understandable. A lot of them don't want to wear a mask in certain situations, as nobody likes wearing a mask. We do it to protect ourselves and to others, but all the information is out there, and everybody being polled knows 2 or 3 people that have had COVID in the last couple weeks. I do think that some of those people are also folks that believe with the current risks about getting the virus, that they will ultimately be okay. I hope that they are right. The most important thing that we can do is get more people vaccinated and boosted, and we are seeing those numbers go up, not as much as we'd like, but certainly going up. The other is we just continue to put the information out there, continue to provide the updates, continue to get it out, and then prepare people that we're going to see increases and decreases in cases for at least a period of time. And just knowing that for 2-3 weeks, you can change the way you go about things doesn't mean you're doing it forever. And that's a lot of, I think, what keeps people from maybe making a decision or two is they think back to the beginning. But in the beginning, we didn't have the PPE, we didn't have the testing, we didn't have vaccines whatsoever. The mortality rate was huge. We didn't have the best treatments for it. In fact, some of the treatments that you would normally do for something like this wasn't helpful. But I do think that the information is out there, and we're going to continue to provide it even when other states have stopped. And that hurts some of our metrics when you compare to other states. You know, when a state stops reporting cases or deaths, all of a sudden they look like they've done better in the pandemic. They haven't. We're just trying to make sure that we provide accurate information for everybody. Stu Johnson, WEKU.
Thanks, Governor. You've obviously expressed concern about the application process with FEMA. Do you have a feel for what percentage of cases are being denied by FEMA?
Not yet, but we have asked and we've been told that we are going to be able to not only get those figures, but that FEMA will tell us about trends they're seeing in the data. What are the reasons people are being denied? You know, I have a big concern that in the process itself, you get denied if you haven't provided a piece of documentation that they need. That shouldn't be a denial. That should be an incomplete. Those are different. and they need to acknowledge that that concept that you've been through a ton and you're getting an email that says you're denied, which is pretty cold. You know, they need to rethink how that process looks and works. But I would say to everybody, appeal, appeal, and appeal. And we're going to continue to look on the state side about what steps that we can take to help people. I'm still hoping that FEMA gets this right, but too many cases, people that I know and trust talking to me about too many stories that just aren't right. Again, there's a lot of things that FEMA is doing really well. We would be in a lot of trouble if they weren't here. But this is one, and this is the natural disaster for the cultural change that I think is needed to get it right and to be here for our people. So I get that when we had lesser natural disasters, a lot of this was about reimbursement, right? We would muck ourselves out. We would hopefully be able to push through a small flood and we would get some reimbursement from FEMA over time. That is not what we're dealing with anymore. We're dealing with major natural disasters that come through and wipe out everything that people have. And I know the people on the ground see it and want to help these folks. But to whoever in that middle part is denying folks, I want them to talk to the grandmother that was pulled out of her vehicle as it was being swept away. Her house already gone, her vehicle now gone. All she's got is what's on her. And you're going to say she doesn't qualify for what? And if you're going to deny somebody because they don't have, say, the deed of their house on them, they don't have it. It's gone. We can replace it. But you tell them to register now. Let's not deny them. Let's give them the opportunity to get the paperwork that they need. If I sound frustrated, it's not that I'm not grateful. It's that these people need help. And I want them to get the help. Tessa Duvall, Herald Leader.
Hi, yes. Have you gotten any indication from federal officials as to when this data on denials may be provided? And have you gotten any assurances as to a timeline for getting this system to improve and getting more folks approved?
So in terms of timeline, no. But we're in the EOC with them every day. I was with the administrator on Monday. We even heard the president on Monday say the maximum amount that FEMA can pay out wasn't going to be enough to help these families. I sincerely believe that he wants this to work for folks. I sincerely believe the administrator wants it to work for folks. It just, they got to push both from the bottom and from the top to make sure that it works for people. But we're consistently communicating with them. I'm going to put in another call to the very top. I will say all of my calls get answered. And they would also say I've been very clear on what our expectations are. You can both be grateful for help and also very clear in the expectations for the help that our people need. I still hope that we can get this right, that FEMA can get this right. And if it's getting it wrong, that we can turn it around in time. Let me tell people, regardless of what they do, we here, Kentuckians, whether that's your neighbors or the state, are going to be here for you. We are not going anywhere. When we're looking at those three phases, I hope that tells people we're there for the long run to get you out of harm's way, to get you hopefully stabilized in a place where you're not worried about your next meal, and then to help you rebuild your life. We're not going anywhere. Thank you all very much.